Hi, and welcome to the MCCS Professional Learning Tracking Tool webinar. This webinar was presented live 3 times. And this recording is intended for those that attended the live webinar to get a refresher, and for those who weren't able to attend one of those live webinars to be able to have the similar information and experience as was provided on those 3 dates. So, first, we're going to start off with answering some questions about kind of the design and intention of the tracking tool. So the first question is who? Who should be submitting information to the tracking tool? Who's the tracking tool designed to work with and for? So the tracking tool is designed for all professional learning providers in Montana to submit their information so that we as a larger group, as an entire kind of community of professional learning providers, are able to look at what's being done within all of our schools. So if you are a Montana school system and you have professional learning happening within your building provided by your district itself, then you should be submitting that information, or we'd like you to submit that information. If you're a RESA or a CSPD, a consortium, or an independent contractor that's going out, working with schools, working with individual teachers, presenting at conferences, we would love to have that information as well. The next question that I want to address is the question of what? So we're really, with this tool, we're only looking at professional learning that addresses 4 essential questions. And those 4 essential questions that we want to address are: what do the Montana Common Core standards require of students? Which we can think of as how are the content and the practices different than our previous standards? The next is what do the Montana Common Core standards require instructionally that's different from previous standards? And that's very much about the teachers and how things are different instructionally, what different practices as an instructor we would use than our previous standards. The next question is, what do school leaders need in order to support students and teachers, which is very much about how that instructional leader functions as a part of the learning community and what supports and tools those leaders need. And the fourth is what's different about the new assessment system. And we definitely learned some things about the Smarter Balanced Assessment during the field test. And between the field test and the operational test in the spring of 2015, we'll definitely have some more information for schools and for teachers, for families, about how that assessment system is different and what ways we can be more prepared for it. The next question I want to address is when. We're looking at this question of what professional learning is happening in schools from a start date of July 1, 2013 to an end date of spring 2015. The reason we're starting with July 1 of 2013 is that's the implementation dates for the Montana Common Core standards that was set by the Board of Public Education. Our end date is spring of 2015 because that's when the first operational Smarter Balanced Assessment will occur. And so we're looking at everything in just about a 2-year period. Sometimes we get questions from providers saying they'd really like to participate, but they're only able to provide information going forward. They're not going to be able to go back and look at what happened in the past from July 1, 2013 to the summer of 2014, and that's fine. We really would like everybody to participate where possible, and we recognize that in some cases that will mean only new information, not the backdated information. But for those who do have backdated information from July 1, we know that a lot of great work for supporting the Montana Common Core was done during the 13-14 school year. And we want to honor that work and really make sure that we're including it in our system where possible. The next question is where. We want to look at every part of Montana. We want to look at regions, we want to look at districts, we want to look at schools. We really want to be able to know, of our 818 individual schools, is every school being touched with the important and useful information to support MCCS implementation, especially in regards to those 4 questions. We don't want to know how much is being offered. We want to know where that's getting and who, in terms of schools, are receiving that information. The next question is why. We're doing this because we want to be able to say at any given time, how do we know if we're on track to meet our goals? If our goal is that every student in the state of Montana is able to graduate college and career ready, then they're going to need teachers who are prepared to provide instruction with college and career ready standards. If those teachers are going to be ready to provide that instruction, we need to be able to be providing those teachers with professional learning opportunities that support them in doing that. So we really want to be able to ask that question of, Is everybody in our state getting that? Is that that consistent and high quality professional learning getting to everybody? And this tool is designed to answer that question about our schools at the school level. Are we providing that support so that we know that every student is going to be able to have those teachers? The final question is how. It's pretty simple. Professional learning providers are just going to share some things with us about what they provide and who attends. And the second half of this webinar is going to address how we share that information about what's provided and who attended. But for now, the how of it is really just that providers are going to send directly to our team at OPI that information, and we'll put it into the tool, and then the tool will be able to generate reports. So this is a point in the webinar where we pause to ask or answer questions. I've done my best to incorporate those questions into this presentation so that we're really kind of pre-addressing those questions. If you have additional questions, you can feel free to email me, and I will be glad to provide that information. And if you don't know my email address, I'll provide that at the end of the webinar. So let's talk about that how. There are two things that we are going to need information about. One is what did you provide? And the other is which schools did you touch when you were providing it? So that first part, the information about the professional learning opportunity, on the screen you see a list of the fields that we need within the system in order to kind of track that professional learning opportunity. So I'll address each of the fields individually. The first field is title. We would like you to provide a title for each of your offerings. Sometimes I know that I have the same offering and I call it something different at one conference than another. For example, I have a presentation that I did 3 times last year. One of them was at MEAMFT. MEAMFT has a smaller number of characters allowed in a title, so I had to have a new title for it for that one occurrence to match their rules. So in the system, when you're submitting things, if you have a single presentation, even if the title changes a little bit, if you can just give us one stable title so that we're able to consistently track that same presentation as it goes around to different schools or different conferences. So that title should be as consistent as possible for offerings that happen more than once. The intent of the description is not for you to have to write a paragraph. It's just that often our titles are catchy and fun and don't provide a great descriptor of the presentation. And so we just want the description to be there as an opportunity for you to provide more information. Now, if you're copying and pasting, you can pull the description straight out of the advertisement or out of the conference brochure, but you don't need to rewrite a new description. You just need to give us enough information there so that we have some idea what that presentation was about. The next one is the organization that is providing it. So a lot of times we have things provided by our RESAs where the RESA has brought in a presenter. We want to, in those cases, list the organization providing it, the organization that's organized it. So if you're a school district, you would actually list your district there if you're providing your own. But if, for example, a RESA is coming in to provide, the RESA should be listed there for the organization. And that does bring up another question that has come up sometimes about who should be reporting. For example, I know that Bozeman School District has attended these webinars and is interested in reporting their own data. If the Region 4 RESA comes into Bozeman to provide a professional development opportunity, we really only want that reported one time, and who reports it, I'm going to say is kind of up to the 2 organizations involved. Whoever wants to report it should. So if you ever have any question, feel free to check with me or check with the other organization to see who's going to report. The next kind of group of information is the presenter's last name, first name, title, and email. Each presenter kind of gets entered into our system and we have kind of stable information about the presenters. And so, you know, if you know that you've sent us the information for that presenter before, you can be a little bit less concerned about sending the full information if you use the same presenter all the time. But especially if it's a new presenter, we need to make sure you have the full 4 fields, last name, first name, title, and email. Content area, delivery type, and 4 essential questions. I'm going to talk more about those in a minute. Those are stable fields. You only have 4 options for content area, 3 options for delivery type, and then each of those 4 questions that I mentioned earlier, you'll say yes or no to whether or not the opportunity addressed those. But I'll show you that on another screen. And then we need a start date and end date, and we recognize that a lot of the time the start date and end date are the same thing. But just as an example, if you have a 2-day workshop that is 12 hours over 2 days, the start date would be the first day, the end date would be the second day, and you'd list 12 hours for the number of hours. You might also have a workshop that has been spread out over a series of early release dates. You would put the start date and the end date, and then the number of total hours across all early release dates. That gives us a little bit better sense of kind of how extended the exposure was. 6 hours in one day is a little bit different than 2 hours on 3 different days that all combine to form one presentation. So because we are actually really interested in kind of what the format of presentation is, we've included that. So those of you who really only do 1-day workshops, we know that we'll see a lot of that start date and end date being the same. The last one, location, is one that we actually got a lot of questions about, so I just want to be really clear. In this case, this location is just the town or city that the professional development opportunity was provided in. So one of the things that we want to be able to look at the end of the year is how far educators are having to travel to get to their professional learning. Not necessarily how far each individual does travel, but how far you would really need to travel. So we know that a lot of things are offered in our 7 largest cities. Not as many things are offered in more rural or remote areas. But we don't really know how extreme that is or to what extent that occurs. And so this location is really just to kind of give us a sense of physically what town you were in when you offered it. And yes, online is a valid location. There are 2 ways to submit the information. One is to directly email it to myself or to Tara. And, our emails are all over the MPPLN website. Which is where you got to this video, so you should know where to get those emails. But you can directly email it to us. And in the case that you're pulling it off of an advertisement or pulling it out of a conference brochure, that may be the easiest way for you to do it. You'll notice that a lot of these fields that I just went through are things that would be on that conference brochure. You really just need to add a few pieces of information to it. But the other way that you can submit is through this Google form. And the Google form is linked to from the MPPLN website. You'll notice that it goes through all of the same fields I just talked about. The first one, email address. This is your email address as the submitter. In a lot of cases, there's one administrative assistant or one individual who's submitting a lot of information for different presenters, different trainers, different members of an organization. We really want your email address if you're the one submitting it, so that if we have questions, you're kind of the first person we go to ask. Then you'll put in the title, the description, the organization, the last name, the first name, the title, the email for the presenter. And then for the content area, you have 4 choices: General MCCS, MCCS Mathematics, MCCS ELA, and MCCS Integration into other subject areas. And for those of you that have submitted to the catalog, those are the same 4 categories we use to organize the catalog. What delivery type best matches this PL opportunity? We've tried to select 3 that should cover just about everything. Most things are a workshop within a conference, or a standalone workshop, or a keynote presentation. And of course, a standalone workshop can mean many things, and a lot of that becomes kind of clear with the date, range, and the number of hours, the number of people who've attended. Those kinds of things are kind of clear. We can get information about the standalone workshop. We did get a lot of questions about how broad this one is, but we think that once we look at the full kind of complement of information, we're able to get more detail here without having too many options. And then for each of the 4 questions, you just select yes or no about whether it addresses that question. And you have the ability to select a start date with a calendar, select an end date with a calendar, type in the number of hours, and put a PL opportunity location. So this is the Google form. The advantage for you of the Google form is that you don't have to have a list of what you need to fill in. It's all right there. It also, you have those radio buttons, so you don't need to type out the information. You can just click the radio buttons. But if you have everything already loaded in a brochure or catalog of some sort, we understand that direct email can be pretty quick as well. The next piece of information we need is the information about the participants. Because of the way that we've written our goal is to reach all of the 818 schools in the state with information from each of the 4 questions. And so the minimum that we need is the number of participants of each type per school. We want to know how many administrators there were, how many teachers there were, how many coaches or trainers there were, how many paraprofessionals there were, and if there were other participants there, like sometimes at conferences, we have professors who come, or kind of other people outside of that description of administrator, teacher, trainer, coach, and then paraprofessional. So if you do a lot of presentations that are just in one school, to be able to count each of the types of participants in the room and just submit to us that minimum number of participants of each type per school, that may be easier for you. However, as we think about the range of presentations that happen, there are a lot of times where you have a whole room full of people, and getting the information down to this level of number of participants of each type per school is actually a lot of work. If I do a presentation at a conference with 60 people, or I do a presentation in a region that was open to everyone with 50 people there, and they're all from different schools, and I have to go through and sort out all the different job types in the different schools, that's a lot of work. Many of us, though, use sign-in sheets, and if you use a sign-in sheet, you can just give us a sign-in sheet that has the last name, first name, school name, district name, and job. It can have additional information on there as well. That's the 5 fields that we kind of keep in the tool to track. And we are not tracking individuals right now. However, in addition to it maybe being easier for you, there is some value in using this way. For example, in many of our small communities, there are schools that belong to consortia, and teachers from that consortia attend consortium meetings. Teachers from those schools also attend different trainings across the state provided by other people through conferences, etc., outside of their consortium. So if the consortium is just telling us number of participants of each type per school, and the conferences are using a sign-in sheet, we can still merge that information to a total count of participants by type per school across all providers. But it's actually a lot more interesting if we know, is it the same people who are attending those consortium meetings and attending meetings across the state? Maybe a consortia has a meeting that only has 5 teachers there, and I don't know which 5 teachers they are, and there are 5 teachers from the school who are attending meetings around the state, and the school has 10 teachers that work for it. If everybody's using sign-in sheets, even though we're not looking directly and specifically at any one person, it's not affecting any type of renewal units or any type of licensure, using the sign-in sheets allows us to answer some different questions at the end of the time period about what we might do going forward. So that's something to think about. We are taking the sign-in sheets as an initial thing just because it's easier for many of you. Once we're doing that, we are able to answer some different questions, though. As far as the sign-in sheets, and the participants, there's a few ways to submit. The first is a Word document or Excel document via email. Another, you can PDF or scan a handwritten sheet. So if you pass around a sign-in sheet, you can just scan that into your computer and send it to us. You can also just mail us a hard copy of the sign-in sheet. Just run it through your photocopier and stick it in the mail to our office. One thing that I want to say about why these options, the PDF or scan, are attractive. The way that the system is set up, it's very, very fast for us to enter information. once somebody has attended anybody's professional development opportunity or professional learning opportunity anywhere in the state and been entered into the tracking tool, the tool can auto-complete a lot of information the next time that person attends. So we don't want you to take too much time trying to type your sign-in sheets up into an Excel document unless you're doing that for your own purposes. And I know many of you do that for your own purposes. You keep an Excel document that covers all of the professional development that you offer throughout the year. And so if you do that, you can just send that document. But if you don't do that and you don't have a reason within your organization to be typing it up, you are welcome to scan those handwritten sheets. The other thing that I want to say about this idea of a sign-in sheet and scanning a sign-in sheet on the MPPLN website on the tracking tool tab, there are a couple of sample sheets that you can download and kind of fill your own information into. There's one sheet that's designed for use with a single school. So for those of you who go into a building and might meet with all of the teachers in a school or district at once, you have that sheet that you can use. Then there's another sheet that's a more generic sign-in sheet that can be used either with an individual school or with a larger group where you might be having 5, 10, 20 different schools attend your presentation. So again, this was the point at which we paused for questions. And again, I've tried to incorporate all of the questions into the information that was provided. If you have additional questions, please feel free to email. And my email address is cdewald@mt.gov, and you can email me anytime with questions. It's also available on the MPPLN website if you want to go there to contact me. We really look forward to working with all of you on this project. We're really excited to be able to answer questions. We talk a lot about our really large state. We talk a lot about the kind of lack of equity that teachers experience in terms of especially rural and isolated schools. We're really interested to be able to quantify that and to better understand how we can use our resources to reach all teachers and support all students. Thanks for your time, and we look forward to getting all kinds of information from you as we go throughout the year.